Hi, I'm Jake.
And I'm Steven.
Welcome to Tales from the Sas Graveyard, where we talk to employees at tech companies that are in the middle of the bell curve. Not going out of business, but definitely not hitting the big time. The Sas Graveyard is a purgatory populated by companies that have made it to annual revenues in the 30 to 50 million range, but can't get to the next level, which is pretty impressive outside of Silicon Valley, but frowned upon here.
We interview folks in various roles about their experiences working at companies like this. We're looking to see what common themes emerge across industries and roles. Today, we will spend time with our friend Todd, who worked at RibbitRebate, which created a product in the rebate management space. A couple of firsts for us today on Tales from the SaaS Graveyard, a Canadian work experience, and the first person whose full experience was during the time of COVID.
Now, Stephen, you and I have both had a similar thing as Todd in that we had a role where we both hired and left in the times of COVID. We both lasted just around a year, you a little less, me just a little bit over. And I know other friends that are like this as well, so it's not a unique phenomenon. And I think there's a reason why there are these really short careers or roles that people are having during the times of COVID. And number one, we took the jobs because there was so much uncertainty, especially early in the early days, that we just felt like, oh, we need to take whatever job is available. So maybe we weren't as critical in terms of thinking about where we should go work. And then, at least definitely for me, I didn't have the same emotional connection to colleagues at the place where I was fully remote as I did in previous roles where I had actual human interaction with my colleagues. And so it just made it, I think, easier to decide like, oh, I'm going to go look for something else.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that side of just lacking that kind of friendliness and connection in the office that you used to get. I know in my career and during the COVID times, I definitely put a lot of emphasis on building that emotional connection, definitely with like my direct team. And I felt like I had that. But I think the thing that was lacking was kind of outside the realm of the company of like quickly, like it felt like quickly that my values and the company's values didn't align as much as I thought they did before. Where I think if it was all in person, it would have been muddled. Like, it would not have been as obvious to me because I would have been interacting with people from other departments more often. I'd be seeing more of the leadership talking about things in different ways. Where in the remote setting, it's like we're having an intentional meeting with someone outside of our normal department where, hey, I know my direct team is playing Among Us to celebrate when we ship new things or like playing Drawful or something like that. And it was great. We were having a lot of connection there. But everything else outside of that, it became very clear that I needed to get a new job because my values didn't align with what the company was looking to do. And I think that was, I think that's the whole COVID remote thing sped that up for me, where I think I would have probably spent a lot longer if it was all in person.
Well, let's find out why Ribbit Rebate was not the right fit for Todd. Todd, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
So before we get into Ribbit Rebate, just want to get a little background of where were you in your career before you started there?
So I was a year and a half into sales, and this was actually an opportunity where they had come to poach me. I was in line to become an AE at my previous company. I promoted twice. I had gotten promoted twice. My previous company was doing well. This company was expanding into North America from the UK. And they're basically like, hey, we're going to hire you as employee number 001 in North America to come and build out our BDR team. I was like, wow, that's a great opportunity. So, I was trying to become an AE, and they're like, hey, we're basically going to fast track you into management. You're going to do a player coach role. We just got in Series A funding at $20 million. We're getting, a CEO. Sorry, we're bringing in a VP of sales who's scaled companies like, I'm not going to name the companies. They're big names. We can call them Barry. So yeah.
So basically, like you were not in any way looking for a role, but like this came to your attention. You're like, oh, I'm actually interested in this.
Yeah. And it was things were lining up. The company seemed good. The investment was good. The profitability was there. The product was top of the line in the market. I was like, you know what? I'm getting a chance to take. I was at a good company before, a great company. So I was getting a chance to basically do what they were doing and show other, like, just, apply that elsewhere. So it was a good opportunity.
So first a recruiter reaches out to you, and then you become interested in this opportunity. What was the overall interview process like?
The overall interview process was the recruiter reached out to me. Then I did, obviously after the first reach out, I did a phone screening with the recruiter and their company where they just went through my resume. Then I had a panel interview with their management team. So it was the person who was going to be my boss, a team lead manager that I was the role that I was going to go take on, and a senior BDR on the team. And then after that, I had to do a screening with the VP of sales and a 15-minute screening with the president.
And what were your impressions of everyone that you spoke to?
Honestly, the impressions were pretty good, but yeah, they were pretty good. But something interesting had happened at that point in time, around that time. What I was going into was not going to be the company that it was about to become, because
Sure.
it was all about to change with that one person that was coming on alongside me. It was the new VP of sales. So the company that I was going into was very happy. It had a very family vibe. This was when they still hadn't expanded into North America. They hadn't blown up as much as they did. So things were about to just gear up.
Right, but during the interview process, did you see any signs of that, or just you spoke to people and you liked everyone, or
Yeah.
were there any little red flags during the interview process?
To be very honest, I've thought about it going back. Everybody wants to just be like, yo, you know what? I have a good eye for this, that, etc.,
Sure.
etc. But no, at that point in time, it was good. One thing that could have been a red flag was that I only spoke with the VP of sales for 15 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I only spoke with the president for 15 minutes. And in my final interview with the VP of sales, I said to him, so in sales, obviously, you want to close everybody. So one of the lines that I use, regardless of the time of the interview, is, "Hey," I said, "Hey Barry, 15 minutes is not enough time to get to know somebody. But based on this conversation so far, do you have any reservations on moving forward to the next round?" And he was like, "Todd, you know what? I would disagree with you. I think it's just enough. You should read Malcolm Gladwell, Blink, the story about gun instinct." And then he goes on to tell me that the one thing that you've lived with your entire life is knowing how to breathe, and your gut instinct, being able to tell whether something is your cup of tea or not. He's like, "Todd, I can tell you you're my cup of tea." I was like, "You know what? I'm not even gonna bother. Come on, let's do it. Let's go for it, man."
No, so I mean, at that point, were you weighing the decision of staying at your current role or moving to Ribbit, or was like, oh, I'm definitely going to Ribbit? Was there any like
So
hesitation?
yeah, no. So around the same time, another company, I can name that company. They're called Verisent. They basically do compensation management for companies across the world. Their business was booming because of remote work and everything. They were looking to hire me on as a team lead, and they were offering me more money than my current company was. So essentially, I was at a point where I was realizing that, hey, as great of a position as I'm in right now, like, some doors are opening up that I should not, you know, keep. That there were opportunities coming at my plate that it would have been stupid to stay. So yeah,
But then you're in a great position. You have multiple things lining up. What was it about Ribbit that you're like, that's of all the opportunities out there, this is the one that's for me?
it was gonna give me a story to tell. The story, well, I have a different story to tell now, but the story at that time would have been, hey, they were gonna hire me as employee number 001. They did. I actually, I was the person that found the office location here in Toronto. I built out their BDR team. To this day, it's my model that's being applied there and how they're operating. So I knew, regardless of how good or how bad it was going to turn out, I being number one at anything would have just it would have done something for my career and my resume, and it did. Like, with what we're about to talk about, it might seem a little loosey goosey and wonky, but it's probably the best experience of my career. One of the best.
Cool. So before we turn over to Steven and talk about you're actually starting there, is there anything, looking back, is there anything you wished you'd asked in the interview process that you didn't?
Yeah, yeah. What I would have loved to, what I should have done is I should have gone and talked to people uh, that previously had worked with this new hierarchy of execs that was going to come in. I should have done that because things came up.
Excellent. Well, that cliffhanger, let's get into it.
Yeah,
So you signed the dotted line. What's your first month like at RibbitRebate?
10-hour days. with no expectation. So my boss was everybody. The entire team was working out of the UK.
Mhm.
Only the new VP and our CEO were in California, and I was the only rep in the Eastern time zone. And they were hiring a couple AEs. So the management team was myself and my boss, and basically, I I would have to work till California hours, till basically 5 o'clock their time, so 8 o'clock my time. But I would be waking up 3-4 hours earlier every single day for my boss's calendar, the UK, because when we were interviewing BDRs, they were booking time on his calendar, not mine. So I had to accommodate that. But the thing is that this was right out of the pandemic. Let me tell you this: it was the funnest, one of the funnest experience of my life, because everybody was young. It was a young group of BDRs. Everybody, like, they were all British kids. I love British comedy. I'm a huge soccer fan. My boss was, it was long hours, but I had this. Steven, you know me. I'm a passionate person. Like, we work together, so I had that same energy for that company as well. Till I was not exposed to a lot of things that were going on. The mission at hand was, hey man, you know what? We're gonna build this team together. We're doing this. It was fun. It was just me doing what I wanted to do with the team. It was my first time managing, hiring, and doing all that stuff. So I was flexing a lot of muscles. I was learning new things. It was tiring, but it was also very fulfilling. It was rewarding.
Awesome. And so just kind of ramping up your team at that point of just
Yeah,
like, let's
yeah.
hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Is that generally kind of how you spent the majority of your time? Is it just kind of hiring and ramping the team up, or how did your role change?
Yeah, so a lot of so interestingly enough, I started as a player coach, but in the first month or two, in the first 2 week, my manager, oh, this is important. My manager basically said, "Hey man, like, we actually need you to just continue to manage, lead, to support the team. We're gonna take you off of prospecting." So he said, "I'm gonna take you off of prospecting." This information should have been relayed upstairs. It was relayed upstairs, but the amount throughout the time in my first month or 2 months that I was managing, hiring, training, understanding the product, it was a complicated product. I was also supporting an AE who was just hired by that new VP of sales alongside me. So while we're building these new processes, this AE is expecting me to be a BDR for her, not expecting, understanding that I'm actually a full-time manager. And she's going in the back end and telling, having conversations with her managers that, hey, like, I'm not getting supported and all that stuff. But that's not being relayed to me, because my manager and I, we're just focused on building the BDR team. And that's how the full first quarter is going.
Got it. And that you had no idea that there is, I guess, some resentment building towards you in that way.
No idea at all. There was one moment where within my second or third week, this lady, she comes to me and she's like, hey, you know what, like, the meetings, blah blah blah, like, she says something. She basically played a power move. She said that, hey, we should do it this way, because the next time this information comes to you, it's not going to be from me, it's going to be from our director. And I was like, wait, who are you again? Because now I'm coming from a culture at my old company that was voted the best North American tech culture for 3 years straight. I was the face of my old company sales team. Like, I was coming with a little bit of an ego on this with me as well. Working in sales, you need to have that. When that happened, I straight away went to my boss. I was like, I'm not going to react. I'm just going to show you this message and you tell me what's going on over here, because I need to understand what game we're playing here. I show him the message and he's like, does she know who you are, what your job here is? I was like, no. I was like, you should go tell them, because I'm not ready to be playing that game yet. I've never played that game. I'm not here to play any games. She and I showed it to so we this is basically in our management meeting, and everybody was like, yo, does she even realize, first of all, who you are, what your job, and what your job responsibilities are? And then we ended it there, and apparently he maybe might have had a conversation in the back end, and then she just never said anything like that ever again. It was just calm, it was quiet. I feel like now, thinking about it, maybe her and I should have had a conversation about it, because maybe things blew up a bit more after, and they probably did. But yeah.
Other than the fact that there's this miscommunication, were you happy when you were just being moved fully to coach and not doing the? Okay.
Yeah. I was having fun with it. I was enjoying it, because at the same time we were getting a lot of success. The team was doing well amongst this, and I wouldn't even consider this drama. Like the drama has not started yet. This was just one. Oh yeah. This was just one little, just a problem with an AE being a little shitty towards a BDR, who she doesn't realize that the company's internal model is that the BDR is actually the manager. In the UK, team leads are full-time managers in North America are called team leads in the UK. So this company was calling me a team lead, and my job responsibilities and my pay was that of a manager. So there was just, I don't know, there should have been a lot of conversation, whatever, but it adds more spice to the life.
Yeah, the challenges of languages.
I know. Yeah.
It's common language. It's important. Awesome. And so maybe I'm getting this wrong. You mentioned that you scouted out the office for the area you were in?
Yes. Yeah. So in Toronto, being hire number 001, one of the projects at hand for me was going to be, hey, we're blowing up the team. We're hiring 40 people. There's going to be engineers. There's going to be marketing people and stuff like that. Find a great location to build an office in. Now, with that being said, I was the people that I was hiring. I was getting really close with them as friends, as people that were working with. These were people right out of university. I would like to think that I'm a good leader. I'm a very human and empathetic leader as well. So the way it was going on it was just a lot of fun. We were working together. We were partying together. We were succeeding together, and we basically found an office on King Street, which is Toronto's. It's the poshest street of Toronto, where it's near the financial district. Everybody that gets done with work on Bay Street, just goes to King Street for happy hours. It's everybody in Toronto that works in tech, you'll basically find them on King Street. So the story that was going on was, you know what, I'm gonna be the head of the Toronto office. We're gonna have have an office on King Street. It's just gonna be a life, but it didn't fully go that way.
Got it. And you opened it up. Did the office have? This was post the initial wave of COVID and all that. Did people come into the office, or did it just end up being kind of like an empty?
I never got to go into the office. I left before they all went into the office. I joined my current company in September, and they all moved into the office in October.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Awesome. So I guess going back, kind of like you're in your career at RibbitRebate, and going through kind of, what's the thing that you're most proud of, Todd? What's the thing you're most proud of that you accomplished?
Everybody that was on my team. So when I joined, we were supposed to hire 2 more of me. We're supposed to hire 2 more team leads, 2 more managers. For the first entire quarter, we couldn't find anybody. Things turned at the end of that first quarter. So at the end of that quarter, the 15 people that were hired by me, 2 of them were one was moved into an AE position, one was moved into a manager position, and then the others were split into other teams. I then was left with 7 reps. My proudest achievement is all those 7 reps right now are AEs, or working in a better company, or got promoted internally, or one of them is working with me at my current company.
Of course, you're remote the entire time you're there. Was there any interesting or cool remote perks you got at RibbitRebate?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So, while I was getting going through the interview process, getting poached by them, they knew I was getting interviewed by other companies and I had other offers. They gave me a secret lab Titan chair, the standing desk, and courtside Raptors tickets to sign for them.
Wow.
That was also a red flag. I'm not making this up.
Wow. Well, you mentioned that was a red flag. Can you explain?
Maybe that was a red flag.
Oh, maybe that was a red flag.
Like they're so desperate for people that they're willing to throw all this at them.
Yeah.
Got it.
But obviously, like, hindsight is 2020. My career has not to brag, my career has gone in a direction where I do know I have the skills, but maybe I hustled them a bit harder at that time. I could have, I don't know. Let's just say I was never able to cash in on those Raptors tickets, but I got to keep the chair on the desk.
Hey, the things that count, and they're still with you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
After the initial signing, while you were there perks that like they sent out little packages to their employees with swag, or what did they do to try and make you feel like you're part of the company?
They only did that once ever. This was one of those companies that did not. They weren't a cool tech company. They were just business forward. Wear collared shirts. That's where, under the Series A and Series B. So one thing that I've noticed in tech lately is like everybody's getting investment. If you have a little bit of profitability, you're getting investments. Everybody is able to hire kids outside of university, but then under the hood, uh, the marketing was not the greatest. There was no creativity in conversations. Everybody wanted to talk like a robot. My team was getting success, and then all of a sudden they wanted to just templatize everything. And the swag box that they sent was only one. It was only sent when we had our first record-breaking quarter, and essentially, it was a postcard and just a mini champagne bottle with cheap shot glasses. It was very it was just like, okay, like, very uneventful. Like, it didn't have it wasn't inspiring. Let's just put it that way.
I'm not inspired. Yeah, if I got that in the mail, I would feel a little bit sad or let down.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that might be worse is like a polo shirt with the logo on it, or like a collared shirt with the logo on it.
We're speaking about getting a Patagonia jacket all year long. It never happened.
Oh,
It's like those Raptors tickets. They just dangle it in front of you, but they don't actually deliver.
You know what else they kept dangling over our head? A trip to Napa. Like, just every single time there was this thing that, when we hit our number, we're gonna go to trip to Napa. We're gonna go on a trip to Napa. Funnily enough, I still have friends there, and it started with, hey, we're gonna take everybody to Napa. Then it went on to, hey, we're gonna take the sales team to Napa, and now it's, hey, we're gonna take key stakeholders to Napa.
wow. Oof. That is hilarious. I wonder if it started out as a joke of like, one day we'll be successful, I'll go to Napa, and then it just became a reality for everyone of like, this is a thing.
It is. It is a thing now. They had high expectations of what was going to happen. To be very honest, had they gone through with what was happening previously without this new guy coming in, they probably would be in a way better position right now. You'd probably be hearing a lot about them right now. But
got it. Well, let's get into what's your most memorable day at the company.
The day I quit.
Jake, do we want to go into that now?
Well, no, I think we need to. I think before I think we need to know to start to see like where are the first cracks. So you mentioned like the awkwardness with that AE, but where did you start? Like, it sounds great. You're enjoying your team. Where did the cracks first start to show?
Yeah, the cracks first started to show when my first quarter was starting to end, because so the first quarter is ending with me being purely managing, not prospecting at all. Now, one interesting rule that they had over there was that they were going to have probation periods extended to 9 months. So 3 months of ramp for reps, and then 6 months of probation, additional to see if you're good or not. That was the rule in the UK.
Is that standard, or like is that a normal thing?
It's not outside of the UK. It was in the UK, but that's where things went wrong. They didn't do their back end research that that's not a rule in Canada. So one rep was not performing the best, and my boss just one day called us in a meeting towards the end of our quarter. He's like, "Hey, we have to let go of this person." We're like, wait, what? Why? We have probation. We're like, first of all, like, he's not even doing that bad. How is this conversation happening? We've never heard this conversation before. how are all of a sudden he's a good kid, everybody loves him, he's one of those kids that like everybody wants in the room. Now, by the way, let me give you a bit of context. Prior to coming up to this, every Friday night we're bonding together. Like I'm DJing for the team, we're like drinking together, it's a good vibe, we're doing well. All of a sudden my boss is like, hey, we need to fire this guy. Why are we firing him? Because we didn't realize Canadian rules that we're not allowed to extend probation, and we can't extend his probation, so we have to let him go. Guess who had to break the news to him?
You, I'm supposing.
Yes. And that's when it all started to crumble.
So you have to let him go, which is, and you don't agree with the decision, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
How-
And guess what? It was his birthday.
Oh,
The day of his
The
birthday.
day of.
did they wait to say like, no, don't do it on Monday, wait till it's Wednesday because that's his birthday?
No, the way. Oh man, like, oh, the way it happened was, I found out what was about to happen, and then we all have a morning sync. So it was me, him, a couple others. We're all like talking. We're all in a morning sync, and I was basically gonna let the morning sync end and then hop into a separate meeting with him and then have a conversation. While we're having the morning sync, another one of the managers, he like just accesses the link. He's like, "Hey guys, like we gotta end this right now," and then everybody leaves, and him and I are just on the call, and we just like did there. That happened. Just it was just it was bad. I had an anxiety attack, panic attack, whatever you kind of call it that day. It was my first, like, I was on the street. I just stepped outside for to the grocery store, just to get a coffee or something. I'm just sitting on this. I'm just standing on the street light, and I'm just tweaking. Something's going on. I'm like not in a good place. I'm sketching out, and I just go inside. I tell my boss, I'm like, hey man, I need to take a day off. I'm not doing this anymore today, at least.
Because this is your first time being a manager, and so like this is your first time having to let someone go, so it's a pretty traumatic experience.
Yeah. It was an experience. Yeah.
And how did the rest of the team react when they found out?
Shocked, completely shocked. Now, leading up to this, every single day, now in startups, you know that, yeah, there's always going to be changes. There's always going to be systematic changes and everything. It started with changes, and it started with changes that were just supporting the AEs and just affecting BDR's pay. So there was already a lot of questions being asked internally, like, what is going on? But it was still held together. It was still not broken. It was just like leads being transferred from one person to another, and all of a sudden you'll be like, hey, like this was under my name, like why is it under this person's name right now? Like, why are we not being given instructions when something is changing? And whenever something goes bad, I am the person who has to go deal with it. And the reason why I was always the person who go deal with it, because people just liked me. I was also I was okay being that person. I was able to take that blow and make it less apparent. Now, I was also providing obvious feedback, but the thing is that my boss was going through a similar thing that I was, and
So you basically there'd be some changes, like who was assigned to what leads. You would go up to your boss and like, what would he tell you to like? Would he help with a resolution or?
yeah, he would always help. He would always he was always there to help. Like he was his thing was always wanting to help. But even him, he was always positive, and he was starting to get cranky. Like I could tell it's not, the engine is not running as smoothly as possible, because every time we bring something to him, his first thing was he would go and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But his thing was, okay, let me go fix it. Let me go fix it. It's like every single day. Let's say over the course of however many times I asked him to do something, 5 times, it was more than that. The first time he was like, yeah, I'll go fix it. Second time he was like, yeah, okay, I'll go fix it. Third time he was like, okay, wait, what happened? Fourth time he was like, are you sure this happened? Fifth time he was like, why did this happen again? It was just,
So he's getting frustrated, and then are you getting similarly frustrated?
yeah, beyond. Now, something interesting is happening for me personally around this time, is that I'm sharing and learning my experiences on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for salespeople, LinkedIn around the pandemic COVID time was becoming your glorified resume builder. Like if you share your experiences about how you're learning, how you're progressing, how you're developing teams, you post it on LinkedIn, and my brand was building. and the business was seeing that, and they were basically in a situation where like they, as frustrated as I wasn't ever a victim. I was never victimizing myself because I knew doors were opening or were going to open up for me. Around this time, I got my first podcast last year, and I didn't tell the company that I was doing it because, like, I was like, I honestly, I don't care right now. Like, I was like, even if you fire me or whatever, I just don't care. I told my boss after I recorded it, and he was like, oh, it's fine, it's whatever. But that shouldn't have never like. Yeah, it was just weird.
So on LinkedIn, when you're posting about your experiences, are you always putting it in the rosy light of like, hey, tough thing I had to do, but like a great learning experience? Or do you?
So I don't make those kind of posts. I only share strategic coaching posts, like how to build processes, how to, like, I'm not one of those like, oh, this happened, that happened. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not also trying to be an influencer. I understand the social media game, so I was leveraging it to my benefit. It's like I was basically showing the world what kind of a sales leader or salesman I am. So if anybody was to ever come to my profile thinking about, hey, I would ever want to talk to this guy and hire him, they'd know exactly. It's like I was planning my escape before even knowing I was going to escape.
So you were doing, not necessarily thinking like, oh, I need to get out of here, but it did help you get out of there.
Yeah, it did tremendously.
All right. So you've gotten to the point where you've had to let someone go that you didn't necessarily think you wanted to let them go.
Yeah.
What other things started to happen where you're like, maybe I should start to think about getting out of here?
Great question. So this is a story of 3 quarters.
All right.
3 acts. No, it actually is. So first quarter ended. Second quarter, because I joined my current company for the last quarter of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So, second quarter, the way second quarter starts is the day before, 2 days before this guy was fired. It was a Friday afternoon. This is where the story gets good. It was a Friday afternoon. I was living at that time. This was peak COVID times. I was living with my brother and my sister. Friday afternoon, my sister is actually talking to my dad back home on speakers, and we got done with work at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm just having an informal conversation with my boss on speakers. So my sister is sitting next to me with speaking to my dad. They can hear me. I can hear them. My boss goes, sit down. I need to tell you something. I was like, whoa, what's about to happen here? He's like, I have some good news. I was like, what? What good news? He's like, we're opening up 2 positions, a full-time BDR manager and a sales manager, a commercial account executive and sales manager. And he's like, I want to come to you first. He's like, what direction do you want to go? I'm like, first of all, I'm very happy that you brought this up. So my position that currently was a BDR player manager. So
Mm-hmm.
I was basically he was basically going to permanently take me off prospecting. So I basically told him I'm already doing this thing, and I asked him, I'm like, what keeps me closer to you? He's like, yeah, the BDM position is going to keep you closer to me, direct report to me. The CAE position would be under Jerry, and he was like, I'll just tell you right now, you don't want to go in that grindhouse. I was like, oh, I know. I was like, oh, I know. I know. I don't want to. I know. And then he's like, I'm just like, and my sister's, she's looking at me, she's going like, is this actually happening? I'm like, yeah, I feel like it's actually happening. What's going on over here? And my dad is like, is this actually happening? I'm like, he's like, get it on a piece of paper. He's like, get it written. I'm like, I should have gotten it written, by the way. But he basically, I'm like, man, thank you. Like, you know me, I want to go for the BDM position. I want to continue working with you. He was like, think about this. He's like, think about this, or take 2 days to think about it, and then let me know. Now, 2-3 days go by. He doesn't ask me. I just message him, hey, my answer is still the same.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I'll have an update for you by the end of this month. 2 weeks, or no, a week before the end of the month, we're supposed to announce the position. The transition for the position was supposed to basically be the very next month we're going to start. I'm like, wait, what is going on? Like, we're about to start in a week. There's no other candidates. Like, what is actually going on? Now, around this time, I still have 15 reps. Now, there was one other rep who was made team lead alongside me around the same time. He was team lead for 2 days. For 2 weeks. My manager calls me. He's like, so this is what we're doing. Bill is going to be made a sales manager, a commercial account executive manager. This guy has never been in AE before. I'm like, what? This guy who was made team lead 2 weeks ago. I'm like, huh? Okay, cool. So he's going to be under the grindhouse. He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. And we're going to take 2 members of your team and we're going to put them on his team as AEs. I'm like, wait, what? And they didn't even take 2 of the best ones on my team. They took just like whatever. So in my mind, I'm like, yo, so the best ones on my team are obviously going to be like, what is going on? Why are we not getting a promotion? Because it was a promotion. Why are we not getting a promotion? Why are these people getting a promotion? I had the same question.
Yep.
And then I was like, okay, cool. So they took 3 people and then they hired 1 person externally to be on his team alongside Bill as a manager. I was like, okay, what is happening with BDM? They're like, oh, we're probably going to do that next month or next quarter. I'm like, huh.
It sounds like the Raptors tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, huh. Interesting. And the story just keeps going from that point on.
So basically, you were, to recap, you've been kind of told like, hey, do you want this promotion? You say yes, and then like, oh, we'll do it later. And so then, what is like the next month? Is it the same conversation, or how does it go after that?
So now, around this time, my manager, a couple of days after this happened, that I got shafted for the promotion, my manager is like, hey man, so I want to tell you something that happened last quarter. I'm like, what? The AE went and complained to the VP of sales and director that you weren't supporting her all of last quarter. I'm like, dude, you took me off prospecting. You offered me the job. You were going to make me a BDR manager. And now that I'm not one, now you're telling me that all of 3 months before this, there was something going on? Like, you just, where did you do? I was like, wait, I just felt like I literally had this feeling. I'm like, where am I? It was like I woke up. I'm like, where am I?
And did he try to defend himself, or was he apologetic?
You know what he would say to me? He'd be like, this is happening because you're making a lot of operational mistakes. There was always this one thing that they always went back to, that I don't even remember what this mistake was. And I probably did make a mistake. I like, they were also so regimented that they were like small little things. If you wore a hat in a meeting, you were going to get called out. So they were that kind.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly do not recall what it was, but I remember when I used to have meetings with him, I'm like, man, like, as well as I do, like, you used to say I was like going this way, and then all of a sudden these things started to happen and these patterns emerge in my work level dropping. Now my work level was never dropping. It was always around. He would always say, like, you're the best motivator I've ever seen. You're one of the best salespeople I've ever seen, but operationally you're lacking a little bit. I'm like, what does that even mean? Every time I ask for thing, or like every time I ask for like, something like that, it always goes down to operation or me not understanding the chain of command or something like that. I'm like, maybe I'm not built for this, but there was always this lazy excuse to go back to. But then he would always be like, hey, you know what, I have your back. I'm never gonna like nothing's ever gonna happen to you, all that stuff. So there was just this weird limbo that was just very difficult to understand.
And so is that the story of Q2?
No, there's more into Q2.
Okay.
There's a lot more into Q2. Yeah.
All right.
So the other thing that was going on along the same time was I was starting to get annoyed at things. One day, my BDR comes and tells me, hey, I want you to see something. I was like, what? The sales director and an AE were making fun of him on a Zoom call, and it was recorded. And he sent that to me. And I lodged a formal complaint against the sales director. Now, this is what happens. Yeah. I was not going to get promoted because the sales director didn't like me. That was always the story. It was never that AE. It was never another thing. There was always the sales director. She wanted me to have one-on-ones with her every 2 weeks from the first day that I joined. In my first month, my manager was like, "Why are you going to have one-on-ones with her when the other managers aren't? So you stop that." And for some reason, she has, I don't know what happened there, but she was always a type of person that was just like, just not a good person. Now, the week after, my manager comes up to me. The formal complaint has been filed. She actually went and apologized to him, and something interesting happened. The VP of sales was supposed to have bi-week every meetings, skip level meetings with every team manager after every 3 weeks. He took me off the calendar just without telling me anything. He took the meetings off of my calendar. I was like, okay, cool. After I filed the formal complaint. Now, let me give you a bit of background on that. The VP brought in this director, those AEs, and a couple other people with him. They were promoted 3 times within 2 quarters. And everybody was like, what is going on? So that's a little bit of background context. What else was going on was the BDRs were booking opportunities and the AEs were not qualifying anything because they were afraid of getting fired. AEs were getting fired every single month. Every single month. So now AEs weren't putting opportunities into their pipeline and BDRs were paid for on qualified opportunities. Now, the reason why this was happening, when I had joined, they told me that they had a 50% acceptance rate and it was valid, it was legit. While I was joining, BDRs were getting paid on meetings booked. When I joined, they told me all this. They were like, "This is going to be great." They were like, "You know what? We're increasing quota." I'm like, "Okay, what are you doing with the stages?" They're like, "You know what? We're actually increasing the stage as well." Now, the BDRs are not going to get paid when they book the meeting. Now they're going to get paid when the A's have a meeting with the prospect, and after the first meeting and first demo, the prospect is like, "Hey, we want a second demo. We want to buy." I'm like, wait. So the BDR's job is to book a meeting and bring somebody to your table with a business case. But the BDR does not get paid till the first demo is not had. And they haven't said that, hey, you know what, we're actually going to buy. We want to have this conversation. I'm like, this is really weird. This is really messed up. In the beginning, the A's were putting things on the pipeline. People were making their money. And then all of a sudden, it just completely died off. So the story of Q2 was nobody made money. Nobody knew what was going on. There was this fear of getting fired hanging over everybody's head. And then they made me fire somebody else as well. And the way they made me fire somebody else was that this person he was struggling. He was getting switched from team to team. He was getting switched from AE to AE. And then when he came to me, I started coaching him. When I started coaching him, within 3 weeks' time, I get a message that, hey, you know what, we can't hold on to him. We need to let him go. We let him go.
Did you agree? Did you agree with that decision?
No, I did not. Because my whole thought was, I was like, I always say that I can bring a B player, a C player to a B, and B player to an A. But the sales director was like, my way of getting success is I've never kept on B players. I would only expend them and hire B players and only keep my A players. So that tells me you're not a coach. That tells me you're just churning
Yeah.
churning heads, bringing people in, and culturally, like, that's how you work. So that's how you work. And this conversation was had at a very interesting time when Q3 started. So this is how Q2 ended.
All right, so let's get into Q3.
All right, the final act, I guess.
Yeah.
So Q3, we're hiring more AEs. People are leaving, and I'm told that, you know what, at the end of Q3, we're gonna hire a BDR manager, and you know what, you are gonna interview for this position. So I was like, oh, thank you for opening this door for me to interview for the position that was always mine, that you actually put me in front of, that you weren't going to give me. And now you want me to give this interview to the sales director who is now my enemy. And I just know I'm not going to get it. And you're only doing it as a formality.
And so this is your manager who's previously told you that you're going to get this job. He's like, hey, great news. You got an interview for this thing that I promised
Yes.
you 3 months ago.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so how do you react to him? What do you tell him?
Honestly, at this point in time, I'm so checked out that I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a good shot. I'm gonna give it a fair shot and see what happens. I'm getting ready to start looking outside at this point in time. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go all in. I've had my podcast out at this time. I started having conversations with our current company, but these weren't conversations of leaving. There were never conversations I was having about leaving. Um, so
Just real quick, if you're having a conversation with another company and it's not about leaving, what are you having a conversation about?
I was just having coffee chats with. So that's something that I like. I just meet every week. I'm having like 3-4 coffee chats with other just networking, and I realize now that these two people that I was meeting with, just networking with them, they had a hidden agenda, which I'm glad they did.
Okay, so you're not cheating on your current company, but you're talking with other people,
Yeah.
but you're all in on this interview. Okay, so do you go through and actually have the interview?
Yes, this is where it gets really good. Oof, what an interview! The interview happens at 5 o'clock Pacific time, which is 8 o'clock my time, which is 1 o'clock my manager's time in the UK.
1 a.m.
1 a.m. Yeah, 1 a.m. We get onto the call. It's a 1 hour interview. Prior to the interview, I asked my manager, I'm like, hey man, what are your thoughts? He's like, you're great, but those operational mistakes are going to cost you. I was like, you're already telling me. Yeah, literally. Yeah. I'm like, you're already telling me that I'm doing this interview. I know I'm not going to get it. And
And
I
you're
think I'm going to get it. I'm so ready for it. I'm really ready for it because I have results to talk about. I was going in with stats, with the results.
Mhm.
At this point in time, the BDR team is actually quite successful because my model is being applied across the company. We went from 15 to 40 people. Something is clearly working.
Yeah.
I'm going in this the weirdest headspace ever. I'm like, this is a training activity for me, so let's just go do it. The meeting starts. Half an hour goes by. It's going great. The VP of sale, he's like, Saad, thank you for your diligence. Like, I really enjoyed this. Thank you for bringing the numbers. You're actually the most prepared of everybody that's come on for this. I was like, oh, thank you, Barry. Like, I really appreciate that. Thank you for staying on just for half an hour. I appreciate
Mhm.
it. And then he bounced. My manager and that director that I filed a formal complaint against, they both stayed on. By the end of it, my manager, he was just like, oh, thanks, mate. We've spoken about it. You already know my thoughts. I'm like, he's like, you're my choice, and like, what we need to work on, whatever he said.
Right.
And then that sales director and I stayed on for another half an hour. Now, for the next half an hour, she basically takes her revenge on me filing the formal complaint. She, for the next 30 minutes, goes on to tell me how I'm never going to succeed because I'm too nice. How she goes on to tell me about just, the Zoom, just, like poking buttons on like that Zoom thing, like the fact that I brought it up. He was like she just made a story around that, around firing that one kid who was a D player. And in my interview, I basically presented how I would work on D players and I would bring them up. And she
Mhm.
basically said that's also one of the reasons why you like, you're not a good fit. Like you need to not think about your team, you need to think about the business. The business
Mhm.
can expend these people, bring other people. In a weird way, she was making a very robotic point, but for somebody who's lived that way in that point in time, I didn't get it, but I know why she made that point. She was just like, yeah, if, like I would have just expended that person, like hired the next person, like focus on the A player, whatever. I basically told her at the end of it, I'm like, look, I'll be straight up with you. There's two ways of doing things. When I said this, I knew I was gonna quit very soon.
Mhm.
I was like, look, there's two ways of doing things. There's your way, and then there's a very human and high performing way, which I know is gonna make me very successful. I'm like, keep your position. I'm gonna keep my humanity.
Nice.
I found out 2 weeks after, or then there's this rumor started to go around. So this very week, we got Morgan J. Ingram, who's a very famous sales trainer, to come and do sales training for our company. Now, Morgan and I knew each other from my old company, and when Morgan actually came on, him and I are really interacting well. He's tagging me on LinkedIn posts. Now they were starting to get afraid that I was gonna go do some kind of whistleblowing, that I was gonna do something, and this rumor started going around the company that this sales director, whose name I'm not gonna take, is intimidated by. This is when I knew I have a bit of power in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know what people told me? That these people had never had somebody stand up to them. I've always been brought up in a Canadian work culture. I've never had toxic bosses around me. I've never dealt with any of that stuff. So whenever they were putting me down, I was just creating, according to them, more drama. But I was just like, call this drama. But I was just like, who are you? Like, literally, who are you? I was at a position where I literally was like, I'm gonna take you all down. Like, who are you? And then this is what happened. The story is coming to a little bit of an end now. It's sad, but we have quarterly business reviews.
Mm-hmm.
In quarterly business reviews, you do obviously your full analysis of the quarter. The previous one was great. Now this one, in this third quarter, I was always on one territory. Everybody had territories moved around. My territory was Canada. Canada does not have that many rebates, so I had that other AE. And now for this quarter, I had this new AE. What I decided to do was, for this final quarter, I was at the company as a manager. I had the most meetings booked on the table. Most meetings booked on the table. But you know what I was doing? I was making sure that the AE would run all the first meetings. So AE would run the qualification, because the BDRs were going to get paid on qualification calls. And for the last month, nothing was getting qualified. And the AEs were like, BDRs aren't qualifying it well. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to play your game. You go qualify them all. Guess what happened? Only 5% qualified. I had the highest booking rate and the lowest qualification rate. Highest booking rate, lowest qualification rate. QBR happens. Everybody gets done. My turn comes. My boss has already told me that I'm going to get drilled.
Mm-hmm.
My boss has already told me that I'm going to get drilled. Now, 2 weeks prior to the QBR happening, my productivity levels have completely dropped down, because now I've started getting offers from other companies.
You're actively looking.
Yeah. Now at this point in time, I'm like completely done. I'm like completely done. And my boss basically said, like, man, like, we know things are a little stressy and you're not putting output. No. Actually, a week or so before this, I felt like something was going on internally. I was getting cut off from meetings. Like, there was just, I feel like there was some drama going on. I asked him, like, boss, when this happened, I'm like, is something going on? Are you guys gonna fire me? He's like, no, not in the interim. I was like, what kind of an answer is that? Yeah, I was like, what kind of an answer is that? Then 2 weeks after the QBR happened and my productivity levels are like completely low, he's like, whenever that happens, it seems like somebody would be looking for another job. Are you looking for another job? I was like, no, boss, not in the interim. I'm not. No. So the QBR happens after this. The QBR is happening, and sorry, I missed the timeline. The QBR happened after this. My turn comes. I start getting my turn comes. People open up. He's like, "Oh, so what happened in your quarter?" I'm like talking about all the team success. I'm not bringing up anything that I've done wrong. I'm like talking about the team. Like, okay, great on all these things, but like, what about your pipeline? I'm like, all right, Barry, let's talk about this. I'm like, let's talk about what's been consistent on this territory. This has been the lowest performing territory for the last 3 quarters. You've had your best AEs on this territory for the last 3 quarters. You've had me on this territory for the last 3 quarters. The meetings booked on this territory are in the 90th percentile of the company. For the last quarter, all of these meetings were qualified at a 5% qualification rate. That's the worst qualification rate of the organization. She's like, yeah, Sas. The sales director comes in. She's like, so that's the worst qualification rate of the entire quarter. I'm like, yeah. Do you know who qualified them? She's like, who? Your AE did. I'm like, that was your AE. You just shut up. I'm like, so this is what's going on over here. This is the Canadian market. There's not enough rebates here. I'm not gonna go into it because it's gonna sound like an excuse. And he says, yeah, it is sound like an excuse. I'm like, no, Barry, it's not an excuse. You just have not paid attention to any of the territories. You have no idea what's going on in the business. He's like, are you sure you should be talking this way? I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm sure I need to be talking this way because this needs to be brought up. And then the AE comes in. He's like, hey, we've actually spoken about this multiple times about qualifying these things this way. I'm like, no. We spoke about this once in passing 2 weeks ago. You have not actually spoken about this to me multiple times. So please, just hold that down. My manager is messaging me. He just sends me a clapping emoji. I'm like, I'm like, okay, cool. And then towards the end, I basically called them out on a lot of things, and ended at that, and everybody was just like, "What is going on? Like, what just happened over here?" And then basically, the next day, I got my offer at my current company. I was just trying to bite my time. Now, I'm
And so
very
you know immediately you're going to take this offer.
Oh yeah. I actually had two offers. I had like two companies competing for the current company that I'm working at right now is actually my dream company that I want to work for. I was actually connected with this company from my old company. Let me say this: I had another company competing for my signature, and they offered me 100K salary overall base commission more to come work for them. I did not go there and decide to come work here. Like it just was that way. So,
So you're done from Ribbit, and so now
oh
it's just a matter of when are you telling them?
yeah. And now the reason why I'm not a victim is because things were happening in a very fun way around this time. Like my team knew 2 months before me even quitting that that I'm checked out. We're just partying. We're partying at work. We're actually working, but we're just like we do not give a shit. Like it was just like we're like we don't care. This is just drama right now. So I'm just anxious because my boss and I are friends. I
Mm-hmm.
respect him. I still like him. We still talk. What's it called? I'm gonna go visit him in the UK in the coming months. And I'm just like, and he was the first person that like, hey man, I'm gonna make you a leader. I'm gonna make you a manager. I'm gonna take care of prospecting. Like he always wanted. Every time he came to me with something, he wanted that for me. And then
Yeah.
it was like when when he was getting cranky, he always had great intentions. Like it was never him. They were turning him. He was that company for all of us. Like he was the first ever BDR hire, and he became the global head of development. And now he's earning the most redonkulous salary at another company that I've ever heard anybody ever make, 500K euros a year, which is
Wow.
yeah, it's just messed up. So he deserves to be where he is at. But this is what happened. I'm really anxious about he is the face of the company. He is the company. I'm really anxious. I'm like, I don't know how to tell him. I don't know how to tell him. I like, this is going to be intense. It's a Wednesday evening for me, 5 o'clock, which is around 10 p.m. His time. I give him a call. I'm like, hey man, I got to tell you something. He's like, ha, you're about to quit, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I am. Why do you sound so excited? He's drunk. He's like, man, I'm a few drinks in. I just handed my resignation an hour ago. My
Whoa.
reality crashed. My entire reality crashed. I'm like, what just happened here?
So you had no idea that he was on the
I
verge.
had no idea. I had no idea what was going on. I don't know what that feeling was. It was euphoria. It was validation. It was like obviously I was going through confidence knocks. It was like I'm trying to be strong. I was strong, but like this was actually a traumatic time if you think about it. So yeah, that's a little story.
That's awesome. So I mean, so how did everyone else react? So obviously your manager's happy for you.
Yeah.
But how did the rest of your team react when you told them?
Two of them cried. They were like, it was one of them was like, take me with you. I did. And they were just like, they were all very deeply affected. They were like, hey, you're the company. Like, if my manager was a company for me, I was a company for them. They were like, yeah,
Yeah.
the BDR, for us, the company's culture was the culture that the BDR team has had, the culture that you created. Like, a part of them was like, you can't let us be. So that's basically what happened. Three of them quit. One of them got promoted to AE, and one of them came with me.
And did you ever like the sales director that you had the rival or not the rivalry but that sort of disconnect with any reaction from them or anyone else outside
You
of
know,
your team?
you know what I did the day I quit? I blocked them. I deleted like from LinkedIn, from anything and everything. So it's like completely like eradicated them from everything.
But I have to say, Todd, if we had a time machine and you could go back into all these choices you could make, would you still go with RibbitRebate, or would you warn yourself and say, no, take one of these other opportunities?
That's a tough one. I used to be that person who would always say, man, I would change so many things in life. And now I'm at a point where I would not change anything in life. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe that's a very tough question. I probably would have still gone with RibbitRebate. Maybe I would have still gone with RibbitRebate because it was again gonna be me going to a startup, going to do things that I wouldn't have gotten an option to do at the other company. So yeah, it would have still been a story, maybe a different story, but it would have still been a story.
Todd, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So another great episode. Something that really jumped out at me from the early days of Todd's time at RibbitRebate was being, and part of the hiring process, being promised Raptors tickets if he signed, then he never got them. And I've been thinking about this since he said it. With COVID, I think the Raptors were playing. I was like had to play outside of Canada for a while, so maybe that's why the tickets didn't materialize. And so maybe you can sort of justify that's why it didn't happen.
Jake, well, I'm glad you thought about that. But I think there's some other red flags going on here. And the thing I was thinking about was whole Todd's promised trip to Napa, which I think was originally the entire company. And then it was just the entire sales department. And then I think it was just like the president's club of the sales team. And then I think it was just like maybe one person. But I don't think that ended up happening at all. And it's just, maybe it was just like operational mistakes or just it was too much money and they didn't think about it before promising it to everyone. So I could see that from the executive team side of that being the case.
Now, operational mistakes that you mentioned, that's the excuse they gave Todd when they made him go through the motion, like when they denied him the promotion that his manager initially told him was going to give him, and then they made him go through the motions of interview for it, and then not giving it to him and using that excuse of operational mistakes. And so I think we have now 3 instances of someone being promised and then not delivering. And so each one we maybe find a reason why, but the fact that it's happening over and over again, it's just a good sign that RibbitRebate is not the right place.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think Todd definitely learned that. I think that moment where he had to fire one of his reports on their birthday, I think was kind of a big reflection moment for Todd of realizing the culture of RibbitRebate and the culture of Todd, where he views things being how he wants to be, is not where he wanted to be. And I think I loved where he said that to that account executive he was having those challenges with, of like, you can keep your position and I'll keep my humanity. Like that's a very strong reaction. I think it's a really good ethical choice too, of knowing what you're comfortable doing.
Todd also had that great thing about, he doesn't want to churn and burn employees. He wants to, take the C players and raise them up to B players and raise them to A players. So a lot of really good, humanity out of Todd.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great culture building thing. I love to hear when people want to do that opposed to just churn and burn. I don't think I want to work anywhere where they're like, we actively churn and burn our employees. It doesn't seem like a winning move.
Now, when you burn your employees, are there certain days, your birthday, that struck us as a little inappropriate. Are there other days where it's inappropriate to fire or let someone go?
Ooh, I definitely think there's a few. I think April 1st is definitely like April Fool's Day. That just causes confusion for people. People think it's a joke versus not. So I think it's best to avoid April Fool's Day just because it confuses everyone at the company, whether it's a joke or not. So I would avoid
Right,
that just
they're
for.
escorting you downstairs and you're like, come on, is this a joke?
Yeah, it's just not a good look because everyone's confused. You really want to have a clean break when you're letting someone go. And April Fool's Day introduces a lot of ambiguity for everyone involved.
Right. Now, obviously, you can't fire someone on like Christmas Day,
No.
but what is the buffer period? Like how many days before and after Christmas do you need to wait?
Like I think December, I think people start their vacation around the 20th. Like the office is pretty quiet.
Right.
I think you can't do it from the 20th till the 1st. I think like once the new year has started, I think the 2nd is okay. The first workday back of the new year, I think that's appropriate. But anything up and from the 20th to the 1st, or whenever the first day back, off limits. Like it's just like their family time. They don't want to be stressed about that. But new year, new them, new career. So I think that's okay.
You're giving them the first, either they might be hungover from the day before, so
Right.
you also want to keep that day safe. But then January 2nd, you're out of here.
You're out of here. And that's best for them. They have a whole year to like start working on their next job. So I think that's greenfield. You can fire someone on January
Right.
2nd. Now, Thanksgiving though, because that's another time. It's kind of like the end of the year. Everyone's kind of off that week. It's gonna be awkward if you have to fire them right before Thanksgiving because they're gonna have to tell their family, and that's kind of probably
Ooh,
uncomfortable for some people, you know?
that's right. Would you be happier being fired like the Monday after Thanksgiving?
I think so because you've already told everyone the story of your career and what's going well up in
Right.
that point. I would say maybe even Black Friday would be okay because it's already like you've had the big family dinner at that point, and then you have the weekend to start thinking about what you want to do next.
So as far as you're
Um,
concerned, once you've had the turkey,
Once you've
you
had the
can be fired.
turkey,
So
you can let them go. Yeah.
even Thanksgiving later in the day, at like the evening on Thanksgiving, it's okay.
I think so. Assuming everyone in the family's already gone home at that point, I think that's fair game. Halloween, I think like it could cause some confusion because it's kind of a weird day to let someone go on. Maybe there's like you dress up funny or something for it, like Grim Reaper. You kind of lighten the blow, maybe.
Yeah, I'm wondering like what costume would you want someone to fire you while wearing? Like, what if they're dressed like Mario from
That
Mario
would
Brothers?
be yeah. There was the Mario Brothers letting me go. I mean, there is something that makes it very surreal, which I think I would appreciate of it. But I don't know. Do I really care if they're wearing like formal business clothes when they're firing me?
Right.
Yeah, I think
Or
Halloween's okay. I'll say Halloween's okay as long as the person who's firing you is wearing a costume of some sort. Um, I think that just adds the whole experience. And it makes a great story too for later on in life.
right, like I was fired by a ghost.
Yeah, hilarious.
Now the
Um,
other I another one is I've seen this happen is people getting fired right before they go on vacation.
oof.
And it strikes me as, is the company trying to save on severance pay because you're going on a 2-week vacation where we would have had to pay you. But then we say, oh, while you're away for those 2 weeks, you're actually fired and we're giving you 2 weeks severance. So is it just sort of a cost savings measure? And is it really an underhanded move?
Ooh, I think it's an underhanded move. But I think there is also that whole thing of like I know when I'm on vacation for a bit, once I forgot what I do for a living, I think there's that like halfway point where I start thinking about like what I'm going to do when I get back to work and all the new things I'm thinking about, like from that business book I read. So I think halfway through vacation is on limits because they're already starting to do that mental labor for the company again. So they can start thinking about something else opposed to wasting their time thinking applying business book concepts to their current role.
So
So
you think maybe like the first few days of your vacation might be kind of ruined, but
yeah,
then after the second half, you'll be more reflective and actually have a really positive like experience, like not worried about your vacation being over because you realize you don't have anywhere to go back to.
right. And then it's not like because if you get fired right as you get back from vacation, that stresses you're supposed to be at work. But if you have that vacation time to process it, you're already thinking about other things at that point. You're already moving on. At least that's how I see it playing out. I would have to have it happen to me to say for sure, but that's how I would handle it. I would say probably the best move. I think it would always be a mean move to cut off on someone's severance. So you should probably fire them the day they get back. But emotionally, that might be harder on them. I think is my take. It's a double edged sword to be
Well,
honest.
and really in all of these, I mean, it's never no one ever feels good about getting laid off or fired, and so
No,
there's probably never a perfect time to do it.
there never is a perfect time to get fired or fire someone. But hey, some good news, folks. Jake and I don't have any vacation coming up, so expect another episode very soon. Hopefully, in the coming weeks, coming month. So stay tuned and look out for your next episode of Tales from the Sas Graveyard.